Good morning, everyone. It's Scotty Bones coming to you from the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We got some magical rays of sunshine that just beat the fog back. And now I'm just going to give a little update of what I am doing here in Oregon until I get back to Mexico sometime in the next month or so. Rather than show you my face for the whole video, I thought I would walk around the property while I'm talking and show you some of the scenery. Let's check it out. I made several videos in Albania in 21 and 22, and they still get a lot of views. Americans and Canadians especially are looking to become expats for many reasons. This type of content is very popular, and I get occasional queries from people asking me about Albania and Mexico. So I'm going to make a video soon with some thoughts about both and why I ultimately chose Mexico over Albania. I'll also continue making videos about Mexico as well. Right now I'm trying to buy a repossessed house in Mexico, and I'll definitely make a video about that process. I also wrote a 30,000 word draft of a project while I was in Jalisco, Puebla last autumn. The working title is The Fish's Water. It refers to the idea that since a fish lives in water and always has, it doesn't know it lives in water because it doesn't know anything else. Another similar idea is the frog that lives in a well. It sees the sky from inside of the well and thinks what it sees is the totality of the sky. These are both variations on the allegory of the cave from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato in his book, The Republic. I'll read a summary of what it means as written by the Grok AI on X. But first, in context of The Fish's Water, I'm focusing on the United States since the mid-1800s and tracing certain people and events that influenced how we, as a society and civilization, view reality. Our fish's water. In essence, we are the fish. I do recommend reading the story, the allegory of the cave in Book 7 from the Republic. Here's a short synopsis of the allegory. And for those of you that don't know, an allegory is a narrative in which characters, events, or settings are used to symbolically convey a deeper, often moral or political meaning. So here's the allegory. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave since birth, facing a wall. Behind them is a fire, and between the fire and the prisoners, there's a wall where people walk, carrying objects that cast shadows on the cave wall the prisoners face. The prisoners perceive these shadows as reality because they've never seen anything else. They believe the shadows are the truth. One prisoner is freed, turns around and sees the fire and the objects casting the shadows. He's initially blinded by the light, but gradually understands that the shadows were mere representations of more real objects. He's then dragged out of the cave into the sunlight, which represents the world of knowledge or the realm of forms. At first, the light is overwhelming, but he eventually adjusts and sees the true nature of reality, including the sun, which symbolizes the form of the good. He returns to the cave to tell the others about what he's seen, but they do not believe him, thinking his vision has been ruined by the outside light. They prefer the familiar shadows over the uncomfortable truth. The allegory represents the philosopher's journey from ignorance to knowledge. The cave symbolizes the world of appearances or sensory perception, while the outside world represents the higher realm of truth, knowledge, and the intelligible world of forms. It illustrates the process of education and the philosopher's duty to return to society to enlighten others, despite the resistance they might face. It critiques human nature's tendency to cling to familiar illusions rather than embrace the potentially painful truth. While I work on finishing the first draft of The Fish's Water and finalizing it into its form, its ultimate form. I will talk more in the future about something else I wrote. Back in 2006, I wrote a short book of about 130 pages called A Preparedness Primer. This was before YouTube, before the prepper movement. I wrote it for myself and my family and friends, basically. It's more about understanding what some of the systems are that we rely on, how they got the way they are, how they break down, and how we as individuals can determine the level of danger we are in during a crisis, how to prepare in advance, and how to respond. Much of the content of the book was obscure back in 2006, but now in 2025 it will make more sense to most people why I wrote it. Speaking of systems that we rely on, I love coffee. It's a vast global network, and the coffee I speak of here is a category in the industry called specialty coffee. Within that category, I like to focus on specialty coffee from Mexico. It's a tiny fraction of the business of coffee. It's the healthiest and tastiest coffee that I know of. At this point, I'm going to take a quick break and show you the waterfall. One, because it's beautiful, and two, because it's too loud to talk over. So let's check out the waterfall here for a second. Now back to coffee. The coffee from Mexico can reach the United States and Canada by land. So as global supply chains break apart and reconfigure, coffee from Mexico will become more well known because it can get here by truck and by train. Even with the central toilet banks such as the Toilet Reserve devaluing their money and printing, Mexican specialty coffee is still an affordable luxury, just like rooms at Motel 6 were in the 1990s. $15 to $20 a pound for hand-picked coffee, hand-dried and sorted, that scores in the top 20% of all the coffee in the world is good stuff. That comes out to less than $1 a cup for literally the best coffee in the world. I'll break down more about coffee in future videos, but not as a poser hipster, rather as a big nobody, perhaps the biggest nobody, who has figured out how to live well on a low budget. Naturally, there is an element of aesthetics to things. That is an unspoken sub-theme of all narratives, regardless of a subject. Some purveyors and peddlers of that subject stand out from the rest. Beyond fancy editing, color grading, and ample expense budgets, a humble or underfunded endeavor will rise above others when it has the spark of unity and weaves together threads in a meaningful way. What it is or how it happens isn't always clear, but those with their worldly sixth senses intact can see it or feel it. These are the things that interest me, so they are what I will talk about. There is no single subject that I want to rally around. I could be an expat in Mexico channel. I could be a Mexican coffee channel. I could be a prepper channel. I could be a design channel. Or I could try to be a philosophy channel disguised as a cult of personality. A cult of one. Because I've noticed that the only way that I'm able to satisfy my cravings for novelty and high quality dopamine is in my mind. There may be a unifying theory or God particle, though I suspect that the wave versus particle riddle is a cautionary tale to those learned people who pursue these chimeras rather than a challenge. A vision that I have is that this worldly construct we live in is a bumper car ride set in a sea of fog. Each car has a pole with a light at the tip. The light is your pineal gland, and it guides you through the fog. At intervals, the fog dissipates to reveal a scene that your mind creates to impart knowledge about the construct. Sometimes the fog closes before you understand the meaning of the scene, or it closes and you forget the meaning of what you saw. Knowledge and wisdom are thus accumulated. Let's go take a quick look at the creek, and then I will wrap this thing up. If I was in the same spot I am now last week, I would have been swept away by 3-foot deep water right here during a big rainstorm. That's all for now, amigos. This video seemed to run a little bit too long, so I hope you endure. There's some good stuff in it, and I hope you like the scenery. See you in the next video real soon.